So we have a lot of myths. We have Greek mythology, we have Norse mythology, and we have my girlfriend. But let's look at Greek mythology. Now we don't have any official scripture for Greek mythology. However, we can still look at the different phases of Greek history in order to determine how it all started. These phases of Greek history include the Bronze Age, the Dark Ages, the Archaic period, and the Classical period. In the Bronze Age, we had the Mycenaeans, which were a civilization that flourished from around 1600 BCE to 1100 BCE. Now, it was theorized that around 1100 BCE was about the same time when mousetraps were invented. The Mycenaean civilization was discovered by Heinrich Schliemann, and he provided archaeological evidence for many of the mythological details that we know about. For example, we actually found a dialect known as Linear B, and around this civilization there were many tablets or transcripts that contained the names of deities such as Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Hermes, Ares, Dionysus, and Artemis. However, the Linear B transcript, or the script itself, was lost after 1100 BCE. Now we have the Dark Age, which spans from 1100 BCE to 800 BCE. We call them the Dark Age because there is no literature from this time, most likely due to the fact that illiteracy was abound according to some scholars. However, this just isn't true. We don't have any records not because they couldn't read or write, but because they were trying to write in the dark. Now, there were also less settlements and they were more scattered, and we had people known as storytellers. Now, these storytellers would go from town to town performing songs of myths and legends of an earlier age, and they connected with the people through these myths and legends. Then we had the Archaic period, which spanned from 800 BCE to 480 BCE, and in this period, people once again learned how to read and write. And most notably, we had two great poets by the name of Homer and Hesiod, which put Greek mythology onto paper. So many of you probably already know Homer. He was the one who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. However, some scholars say that Homer was most likely more than one person. It was many people that contributed to create these epic poems. Now, it doesn't even matter if it was one person that created the Iliad and Odyssey or if it was many people, because as we all know, in group projects, you always do most of the work anyways. What's important to note in the Iliad and Odyssey is that there is no introduction of the mythological characters. That means that people at that time already had previous knowledge of the mythological figures, and Homer was just using them in order to create a story for the people. So then we had Hesiod in the Archaic period, who wrote the poem The Theogony in around 750 BCE. Now, the Theogony was an origin story of the mythological characters, and it was very important because it gives us a majority of our mythological knowledge that we know today. So Hesiod and Homer basically paved the way for much of the literature and philosophy that comes in the classical period. And finally came the Classical period, which spanned from 480 BCE to 323 BCE. In the Classical period, we had Athenian tragedians such as Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and we had philosophers that you probably know of, such as Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato. So what I didn't mention was that the ancient Greeks lived around the sea area, and it made it very hard for them to live. Their life expectancy was around 25 to 35 years of age, and really mythology can be understood as a human response to the unwelcome region. Mythology was present all the way back from the Bronze Age, and it was only written down in the Archaic period by Homer and Hesiod. So, how did Greek mythology start? I have no clue.